Hello, my name is Anne-Marie Cannon, and I'm the host of Armchair Historians. What's your favorite history? Each interview on this podcast begins with this one question. Our guests are people who like history and get really excited about a particular time, place, or person from our distant or not so distant past. The jumping off point is the place where they become curious, then enter the rabbit hole into discovery. Armchair Historians is a Belgian Rabbit production. Stay up to date with us through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Wherever you listen to your podcast, that is where you'll find us. You can also find us at armchairhistorians.com. Armchair Historians is an independent, commercial-free podcast. If you would like to support the show, you can buy us a cup of coffee through Ko-fi, or you can become a subscribing member through Patreon. You can find links to both in the episode notes. Happy Halloween, friends! It's the most wonderful time of the year. Welcome to episode 3 of our special Halloween series. And today's episode hits all the bright season high notes, including horror, hauntings, and a bit of a history for good measure. My guests today are brother and sister co-hosts, Allison Blankenship and Jordan Walters of the Mystery History Podcast. Theirs is a podcast about conspiracy theories, true crime, the supernatural, and everything in between, with subtle attempts at humor along the way. To find out more about Allie, Jordan, and the Mystery History Podcast, be sure to check out our episode notes. Allison and Jordan, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
So I start every interview with the same question, and I'm excited because I don't know what you're going to talk about today, but I love the content of your podcast. So, and I was telling you earlier that I've been obsessed with Investigation Discovery Channel. Like every day I watch 3 episodes of something. So I know I'm going to love whatever it is. I listened to your Pennhurst podcast last night, Pennhurst Asylum.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was interesting. Okay, so what is your favorite history that we're going to be talking about today?
So we cover not only true crime, but we also cover some history. So we decided to pick the Radium Girls. Have you ever heard of them?
No, I'm intrigued.
Basically, the Radium Girls, back in 1910, they started using radium in things like a wide variety of things. Like they put it in water, chocolate, toys, nightlights. They thought that it was kind of
I thought it was like a fountain of youth type thing.
Fountain of youth.
So they started putting like water, toothpaste, lipstick, anything you could think of. They put this chemical inside of it.
Yes.
Before they even really did any research on it, the thing about it is it glows. So people were just like automatically intrigued by it.
So they started using, because it glowed, they started using this to paint the dials of watches. And they would have girls in 1917 they told them to lick the tip of their paintbrush to make it pointy, so then they could be accurate with painting the dials. They didn't tell them how dangerous licking and putting radium into your body was. So
they were actually told it was good for them
by
their
because
superiors.
It's a fountain of youth.
Yeah.
Did they really believe it was good for them, or did they know that it was not?
I think at the beginning they thought it was good for them, and then as the years went on, they kind of realized like it wasn't good for them, but they kept telling them it was. So it's, yeah.
So,
I don't think they knew at the very beginning, but
right. So a lot of the men. So this was mostly women that were doing these dial paintings. They did have a separate part of the warehouse where men would actually wear PPE gear and try to protect themselves. So on one side you have the men doing this, and then on the other side you got women sticking it in their mouth.
Yeah, they'd wear
Why am I surprised about that?
Right.
Why am I like... Yeah, okay.
They would wear like the radiation vest. Like if you ever get a X-ray, they'd have like those weighted vests on. They would just walk around in those, and the girls are sticking it in their mouth. It's like,
yeah. Ugh. So it started out to be where the girls would go out, if they would be getting dressed and it would be dark, they would pass by a mirror and their whole body would glow because of the amount of radium that they had in their system. They would paint their fingernails, they would paint their bodies because
Their lips,
they just,
yeah.
their lips, they thought it looked cool.
They were trying to get the attention of people, so they would, they called them the glowing girls whenever they went out after work because they were all just literally glowing. Yeah.
So were these customers of products, or were these the people that worked in the factory?
The people that worked in the factory.
Yes.
So they would, they'd finish a shift and then they'd all decide to go out together and then they'd all be glowing. It's, like I said, like she said, they would paint their fingernails just because they thought it looked cool, which it probably did.
Well, I'm sure it did. I'm sure
exactly.
It was really cool. Like, I could get on board with that look. But...
So then after 5 years into painting these dials, Grace Fryer, who was one of the dial painters, started getting really sick. And it got to the point where she started having aching teeth. She had to go to the dentist and they pulled some of her teeth out. She would have yellow ulcers in her mouth that would fill up with blood. And she was then her limbs started kind of decaying, I guess you could say, and she broke body parts. So
the thing about radium is your body mistakes it as calcium. So whenever you ingest it, it attaches to your bones and it creates them they call it honeycombing. So it's like it creates holes in your bones because it's taking in the radium instead of calcium. So it's basically just empty spots in your bones, and it's rough.
And actually, I'm sorry, it was Molly, not Grace. Grace is later. So Molly is who was having all of these issues. So
I just want to interject that you can't see me because this is an audio podcast, even though I am going to use a video eventually, but I am making a lot of faces, right? Do you see that?
Yes.
That's a good response. I did the same when I was reading about it.
I'm astounded by this. I just want to say that because I'm not saying anything, but I'm like, so go ahead.
So anyway, so Molly is who was having all these issues. She actually had to get her jaw removed, the roof of her mouth, and some of the bones in her ears.
That wasn't like an elective thing. She went to get a tooth pulled because she was having a toothache, and the dentist tried to pull the tooth out, and her entire lower jaw came off.
Yeah.
Because of the honeycombing. So, yeah.
Okay, I just took a picture of me so that I could put it in the episode notes.
That was a good one.
That's the same face I made, so yeah. That's.
So anyway, so after Molly had all this happen to her, it started spreading further through the tissues of her body, and at 5 p.m., her mouth flooded with blood, and she hemorrhaged so fast that the nurse that was with her couldn't stop the bleeding, and she bled out.
And this was about 7 years after they opened the... Okay.
Yeah, 5
years.
Let's see. 1922 was when she finally, in September. So the doctors really...
She was only 24. Sorry to interrupt. So this wasn't like an older... Yeah, this is...
On her death certificate, the doctors didn't really know what had caused all this, so they chalked it up as syphilis, like you do, I guess.
Did no research. They're just like, let's slap a label on this. And
Oh my God.
And then quickly after Molly had passed, another coworker soon followed, so these girls started kind of dropping like flies. And Grace, the one who I had actually misspoke earlier, she was the one who was trying to stop all of this from continuing on and trying to protect these girls. The president of the USRC, which is who was over this warehouse, kept denying that radium was causing these issues. So they tried to take them to court. They tried to hire all of the bigwig attorneys that they could find to prove that there wasn't any correlation between the radium and all of these health issues that the girls were experiencing. And they wanted to kind of try to pin it on the girls that they were just trying to get money because at that time, it was during the war, and these girls were trying to get money to help provide for their families. So they just thought that this was like a stunt for
Well,
them to
yeah, they
get
were a
money.
bunch of sluts who basically had syphilis and they were just trying to get money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Grace Fryer's spine actually had started having issues, and it was actually crushed to the point where she had to wear a steel brace. Another one of the girl's jaws was eaten away to a stump, and a woman's leg was shortened and fractured.
They were all
They were falling
experiencing the
apart.
side effects, yeah.
Yeah, that's what Grace Fryer. It was crushed. Kind of sounds like she was in an accident, but no, she was just like walking one day, and the weight of her torso crushed her spine. That's how bad her bones were being damaged.
While the Radium corporations, had the money to have all of these big time lawyers to try to plead their case, Grace was trying to find a lawyer of her own to try to go after these people. And it's kind of like some lower class citizen trying to go after like Amazon or something today. They've got all the money in the world. She was actually able to find somebody who was willing to help her, which was Raymond Barry. He accepted the case, and 4 other coworkers actually decided to testify against the Radium Corporation, that they believed that this is what was happening to them was because of the poisonous radium.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the statute of limitations for occupational poisoning was 2 years, but the girls didn't start seeing their sickness until, like we talked about, 5 years after they started working there. So this statute of limitations put some trouble in the mix to where they couldn't nail these people. There were some other girls that came forward to try to help Grace with this uphill battle of proving these people were actually at fault. Catherine Wolfe was one of these people. She actually developed a grapefruit-sized tumor that bulged on her hip, and she had lost most of her teeth and had to pick pieces of her jawbone out of her mouth because it would just splinter. She constantly had to hold a handkerchief up to her mouth because it just kept seeping blood constantly. She fought for justice in the mid 1930s, and America was gripped by the Great Depression, and Catherine and her friends were shunned for suing one of the firms left standing, this Radium Corporation. Basically, this Radium Corporation just did appeal after appeal after appeal to keep it tied up in the courts, and a lot of the women died before they got anything.
Yep.
But at the end, she finally did win. Close to her death, the case did go to court. Catherine, I'm talking about. Catherine ignored her doctors and instead gave evidence from her deathbed. In doing so, with the help of her pro bono lawyer, she finally won justice. So they did finally admit that they were doing
people
wrong. But then she passed away. So why are we talking about this? Why are they so important?
Yeah, basically this whole situation is the reason that there's OSHA guidelines now, which is Occupational Safety and the Health Administration. So that's any time you hear about anything in the workplace, it's because of these women. Where if they had never stepped up and gone against these big corporations, this probably wouldn't be in effect today, which is pretty amazing when you think back.
That is amazing.
But this also says radium has a half-life of 1,600 years. So these women who died back in the 20s are going to have this in their bones for 1,600 years. And they say if you go to their grave sites now with a Geiger counter, you can still see radiation if you stand above their graves.
Oh my word.
They would still be glowing today.
Yeah.
For many, many years.
Do you know if people who came into contact with them because they had this radium poison, were they exposed to it?
We didn't see anything really in our research, but I would imagine they would have some sort of effect. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't good for you, but we didn't read anything about any of their husbands or significant others suffering.
So how long after they were exposed and being exposed to this did they generally perish?
It was about 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
They all passed away.
Most of these women too were in their early 20s when this happened. So it's not like they had weakened immune systems or they were healthy, nothing wrong with them. And then, this just...
And they were trying to recruit people so much to do these dial paintings that a lot of the times they would say, oh, well, back then they had big families. So they were like, oh, bring your sister and all your family in and they can start. So it would hurt huge groups of families too, because they would bring all of their siblings in.
I'm trying to see. The reason a lot of people agreed to it is because they got paid a lot more than the average worker would back then, even especially for women back in those days.
Yeah.
They got paid very handsomely for what they did, but
let's see.
I can't remember exactly what the price was, but that's the reason. I remember reading about that. They got paid a lot more than
3 times more. And that job was ranked in the top 5% of pay for women workers at the time. And a lot of the men were.
Do we know anything about the men who were, suiting up with the protection and all that?
I don't see any death records for them, so they probably made it out just fine.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
That just blows my mind that in the same building, there's people that are wearing all this gear, and other people that are putting the same thing they're protecting themselves from in their mouth.
And the thing that's crazy about it is that they specifically told them to put the brush in their mouth to make it pointy so that they could get these good lines.
Well, then what were you gonna say?
Go ahead.
They gave them. A lot of people were complaining about it because it's not comfortable to lick something 1,000 times. So they gave them like a little vial of water, but they said that it would slow down the process, and they got paid per dial. So at the end of the day, they just said it was easier to lick it and then do it. So they were kind of given an out, but at the expense of like you're going to be punished for it almost for not.
Right.
Well, kudos to them for. Grace, it's Grace and Molly, right?
Right.
And everybody else who participated in stepping up and saying, this ain't right. This is what happened.
Yeah.
And they were pioneers.
Definitely, especially with them being women who, didn't have much say back then. And if it would have been a man, it would have been different.
Exactly.
But these women, so, and like George said too about this creating OSHA standards, before this happened, there were 14,000 deaths on the job every single year. Then whenever OSHA stepped in, those 14,000 went down to 4,500 with their standardization of safety. So not only did the Radium Girls protect themselves and their coworkers, but they also protected a lot of people on the job, because this didn't just happen in one factory. This happened in multiple factories throughout the country. So them stepping up helped those girls and the industry as well. So it's very.
That's 10,000 people a year for 70 years.
Yeah.
So they've saved that many people. That's pretty amazing when you.
Yeah.
It's one of those stories on the surface. It's kind of like it's not that interesting, but then the deeper you dig into it, it's like it's pretty amazing the things they did.
Right. So is this company still in existence?
No, I can't remember when they went out of business, but I think it was shortly after after World War II. They were actually open until after World War II, which is kind of surprising in itself. But then after World War II, they shut down.
Are there pictures? Do we have pictures of this, of the
Yes,
Radium Girls? Oh, cool.
Yes.
Awesome.
Jordan does all of our graphic design artwork for our Instagram and our podcast, and he's made some really cool posters for the Radium Girls, and then there's some historical photos that we can give you as well, to show. They're not pretty, but yes, we do have pictures.
It's one of those things that's almost hard to learn about. Like you saying, your face was like, that's just an automatic response to hearing those things. But I think it's very important to learn about these things because they changed a lot of people's lives.
And as me being a woman, I'm very proud, that they stepped up and did this.
And they just kept pushing and finding allies. And, that is we're still having to do that today.
Yeah, it's very relevant. It's very relevant in a different way, but we still have to make sure we hold people accountable when things aren't right.
And everybody has a voice, no matter how small you feel, you still can make a difference. So I think that's a good message to spread.
Yeah, and that's a good message that comes out of this story as well. It's inspiring, and it acts as kind of our moral compass and why we need to keep giving voice to the injustice in the world. It's very relevant for today, this story.
Mm-hmm.
It's also going to be part of our Halloween, moving up to Halloween episode, so the pictures will be fine.
Yeah, they'll fit right in.
Where do we find this history in pop culture? Do we?
I know they made a movie in 2018, I believe it was, but it wasn't very like publicized.
No.
I think it's just called Radium Girls.
Yeah.
Was the title. But yeah, I never saw any previews for it, but there is a movie about it. But on top of that, I know there's a couple books about it, but I never heard it talked about, which is.
Yeah, to be honest, Jordan and I have a board of everything that we want to discuss on the podcast, and he actually had found. Where did you find this?
I read about it a really long time ago.
Yeah, because
I can't remember exactly where I heard about
I've never heard of Radium Girls before we researched it and discussed it on our podcast. And I just think, this is something that everybody should know about. It shouldn't be hidden. This is a big deal.
Right. I need to say that something is happening with our your voice is lagging, which is fine, but then there's like this speed up, and then all of a sudden you're slow motion and the words are coming out like you're a little drunk or something.
Hey, no judgment.
I see it has a poor network connection. I don't know why that is. I don't think anything else is connected to the internet.
I don't know. Maybe it's better if you guys click out of the camera and maybe all the juice can go into the audio.
Okay.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah.
Even though I do prefer seeing the people I'm talking to. Okay.
What about now?
Well, so far it sounds okay.
Okay.
So we asked, where do we find this in pulp culture? You said there was a movie that wasn't very widely publicized. Well, we'll put a link to the movie and the information about the movie, and I'm definitely going to watch that. So what do you want the listeners to really know about this history? What do you want to leave them with?
That this is important, that if you are, if Big Brother is telling you to do something that you feel is wrong, you need to stand up for yourself and make sure that your voice is heard. I think that a lot of the times, we just do things because we're told to do them, but we don't think about how this affects us, when a lot of the times in corporations, you're just a number. If you would go out and die for whatever reason, they're just going to have somebody to replace you the next day. So really, you have to watch out for yourself and make sure that what you think is right is what's happening.
Yeah. And I would say too, if you're having those feelings and you work in a giant company, I guarantee you're not the only person having those feelings. So it's all it takes is a little spark to create change.
Right. And change that can happen not just that minute, that year. It could happen over decades, like the Radium Girls.
Yeah, change doesn't always happen instantly, but getting the ball rolling is very important if you believe it's something that should be changed.
Right. Well, I think you're right. And I know for myself, I'm a little bit older than you guys. I'll just say that. I was raised to basically listen to what others said, especially men, that they know, you don't. Mansplaining, that wasn't a word back then, but that was a big part of my life. And just to kind of piggyback onto what you're saying, that shame and discomfort, you're raised to kind of use that as your compass. And if you're feeling uncomfortable and you don't want to do it, 9 times out of 10, you need to move out of your comfort zone and just do it and find allies. Because like you said, there is going to be somebody out there who feels the same way. And 9 times out of 10 in my life, as I've gotten older, because when you get older, you can kind of say anything you want and get away with it. But it's not really getting away with it. It's basically calling a spade a spade. And so
Yeah,
I didn't know about this history. Thank you so much for sharing it with me. And the fact that it is really the roots of OSHA, that's huge. That is
yeah.
huge.
Well, because everybody knows OSHA,
Hmm.
but nobody
Right.
knows the Radium Girls. It's weird that that's been hidden, I feel.
Yeah.
Right. And
So
it's
yeah, I
one
think
of
it's
those,
very necessary to learn about.
right. I think it's one of those histories that we need to bring to the forefront. I did an episode not too long ago about Ida B. Wells, and she's another one. She was one of the co-founders of the NAACP, and she wrote a
Hmm.
book about the lynching that was going on in the 1800s and at the turn of the century. But it's like Ida B. Wells, who's she? I mean, I think she's more
Right.
relevant
Right.
than George Washington, but that's just me. But I never heard about her, and so. I think it's cool that we can bring these stories to the forefront through our independent podcasts, which I see you guys doing. Kudos to you for that.
Well, and thank you so much for having us and letting us share this story. And the more people that know about it, the better we'll all be, I
Exactly.
think.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything that I haven't asked you specifically? Because I would like to talk about your podcast too. But is there anything that I haven't asked that you think is important or that you want to share?
I think we've pretty much touched on everything that we felt to be very relevant. So
Hmm.
I think we've covered it all.
Cool. I love this story. I love it. And I'm gonna, definitely it's brought me to the rabbit hole of the story. And that's what I hope for other people. Like I asked you a couple questions, you didn't know the answer to it, but I can go and look for those answers. And
Hmm.
that's what I love about history and this type of thing. And I want my program, I want it to be accessible to anybody who has an interest in history. And that's how we move forward and find out more information about things. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. So tell us about the podcast.
So we are the Mystery History Podcast. It's myself, Allison, and my brother Jordan.
Yep.
We do a weekly podcast every Monday, and we talk about a wide variety of things.
Yeah. History, true crime, conspiracies, supposedly haunted buildings.
Yes. Yes, we try to hit all sorts of topics, and we really. I grew up watching horror movies, which I forced him to watch
Yeah.
since he's 7 years younger than me.
I watched what she watched, so.
So we've we have a very high interest in these topics, and it's just really fun to be able to come together and share these stories that people might not know, and then see the feedback from our listeners that also enjoy these stories.
Yeah,
So
they're usually serious topics, but the podcast isn't very serious. I mean, it's serious because we're talking about death and things, but we try to keep it light and
yeah,
try to
yeah,
have
Light
fun
and
with it.
airy.
yes,
Like
Yeah.
kind of like my favorite murder fashioned after that
yeah,
idea.
Yeah.
It's a
yes,
comedy
yeah,
podcast about murder.
right,
Yeah, it's a weird
Well,
concept when you like stop and like just put it in a sentence, but it's
But
yeah,
you got to have humor about things. It's uncomfortable. There's all kinds of humor, but yeah, I love this shit. I freaking love it.
yeah,
I
right,
think it's great that you're doing this. It's a niche because you're
yeah.
taking all those kind of dark stories and history but I like the fact that you're also looking at the historical context and you're taking that seriously. So I really
yeah,
enjoy that about your podcast.
Yeah, I'm very big into. I'm more of the take it and we'll make not a script but like notes. I'm very big into timelines, and then he's the graphic person that puts all the pictures on it and does the editing, and I don't know about all that stuff. But I think I think it's important to have a flow with if you're doing a team podcast, and I think
Yeah.
him and I bounce off of each other well, and it is heavy doing these topics week after week after week. So you have to have some sort of comedic outlet for it because
yeah.
it just gets sad
There's been
sometimes.
there's been a
Right.
couple times where we do a couple murder like serial killers in a row, and I'm like, I can't do this again. Like, we need a week
Yeah,
of something
yeah.
light.
So we've done some horror movie trivia. We've done where we just talked about what's our favorite scary movie to try to break up some of that darkness.
Yeah,
But we're always very respectful of the victims, and and that's something we always try to do is
Yeah, we're not trying to be disrespectful
not make
at all.
fun of
It's-
them,
yeah,
but
it's-
just, you know,
sometimes the situations are funny,
yeah,
no matter
Yeah.
what.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's,
Well, I can relate to that because, like I said, I'm on this new kick because I have this new subscription to Investigation Discovery Channel, and there's a show on it, and I know you've seen it. It's Surviving Evil.
Yes.
I can watch one of those a day, but I can't. Like I'm a binger. When I get into something, I binge. I just binged on the Umbrella Academy season 2, but that is something that I can't. I can watch one and it just wrecks me because
yeah,
Yeah.
you
too
have
heavy.
this you have the story of, it's the emotional part of it because you have the victim. Spoiler alert, they all survive. But you have the victim who basically walks you through every moment of what has happened to them and their horrific stories. And
Mhm.
I can only like listen to one of those a day. Then I have to do a palate cleanser with extreme forensics because it's all very
Scientific.
scientific. And I can watch a couple of those in a row, but yeah, so
See,
I go ahead.
it's funny because we on Anchor, you can tell you what demographic listens to your podcast, and we are like 85% female that listen, and for me, that kind of surviving evil is like my bedtime story at night. I sleep with the TV on, and and that's my lullaby to go to sleep.
No, see, I'm more of an extreme forensic lullaby. I can't do that. It's so emotionally provocative to me that
It is. I have anxiety anyway, just in my normal life, but learning about these stories, it makes you like I think about everything. Like, what would I do in this situation, and how am I going to get out of this situation? So, I mean, while it's very interesting and terrible, it also kind of like makes you start thinking about what would you do in that situation? How am I going to get out of this?
well,
Yeah, it's
my
the same
dad
thing
was
with
a cop. My dad was a cop, so I always kind of thought I was very like savvy out in the world, but um I live in the mountains in Vermont, not Vermont. I used to live in Vermont. I live in Colorado. So, but I notice now because I'm like watching all these shows that I just took up metal detecting. And so when you're metal detecting by yourself, you're really into it. And since I've been watching this stuff, I've been like constantly aware and freaked out.
Looking over your shoulder the whole time.
Yeah.
I was out. I don't go out by myself unless I'm in a, visible place. But yeah, yesterday I was out there and I was freaked out. I was hearing noises and I
bet.
didn't know what it was. I had all these like shows in my head.
Flashbacks.
It's funny how watching certain things can change your whole mindset. Because if you watch like comedies all day long, you wouldn't be thinking like that. But it's just
Right.
you put you in a certain place where you heightens your awareness.
Right, I know. And I always think now when I'm metal detecting about, oh my God, what if I found a skull or something, which happens, it
Right.
happens. But anyways,
End up on one of those shows.
Right. Somebody will do a podcast on me one day.
yeah, right. Well, I was just metal detecting in the field over there.
Yeah. That's funny.
Oh, good times. Life is too short not to laugh, you gotta make
Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, we've digressed, which is totally cool. Getting back to your podcast. So how did your podcast come about? Tell me about that process and why did you start it this April?
Well, our family lives in the middle of Pennsylvania, so it's about a 6-hour drive from where we live. So we used to go back there all the time together. For the past 2 years, we've been talking about starting this.
Yeah.
Because we'd listened to a couple other podcasts they just seemed fun, like they were having fun the whole time. So we're like, that'd be fun just to do it once a week. So then we've been talking about it forever. And then once the quarantine happened, we kind of saw it as a perfect opportunity to take some time and just sit down and actually do it.
Yep.
Because it gave us time to actually, sit down and prepare instead of all the other times it was just life was happening and
Yeah, there's stuff to do outside and
places
cool
to go.
stuff. And now all I got is brother.
You could congregate indoors without a mask and without worrying about your life.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, it was just kind of a perfect storm of things. Like, we probably should have started this a long time ago. So, like I said, we've been talking at it, but it's just
Well, and
life gets in the way. And
my brother and I have a very, we think each other are hilarious. We think we're super funny.
yeah,
And we always joke about we should have like a reality TV show follow us around.
Yeah.
So we just essentially created our own.
Our own
And
show,
and it's been going really well. It's just exciting to see how far we've come from, we were excited about our first 100 downloads. Now we're picking up to 5.7 thousand downloads.
Yeah, we're in 40 different countries, which is pretty wild to
40
think about.
countries have heard our voice.
You're ahead of me. We've started at the same time, but you guys are ahead of me. I just hit 1,500, which I was really excited about. But
yeah, that's what I was telling her like a couple weeks ago. Once you hit, like, I think 1,000's like the biggest hurdle to get to.
Yeah.
And then once you hit 1,000, it starts like snowballing. Because we hit 4,000 one week. Then by the next time we recorded, we were at 5,000.
Yeah. Wow. Last week we were at 5.2, and this week we're at 5.7.
Wow.
So that's a hell of a jump. And we, we're recording today for release on Monday, and that's our 20th episode. Mm-hmm. So it's a big, woo
milestone.
Yeah. But then next it'll be our 100th episode. So.
Yeah. Right. And it's just slow and steady. And I guess that it's like algebra, because when you think about it, so now you're going to have 20 episodes out there, and more people listen to the one that you just dropped, but there's still people listening to the other ones. For the first time.
And I almost wish we could just like lock those episodes, because they are terrible.
The first couple were rough, because we didn't really do like practice episodes. We just like recorded one and put it out. And that first.
Well, I listened to a part of your first one, and I always notice the same with mine, is that the sound quality is way better. You've gotten better with your sound quality, but I like that about listening. If you go back and listen to My Favorite Murder in their first episodes, did you notice the squeaky couch?
Right. Yeah.
It's very raw, the first couple episodes of any podcast.
So,
you're right. It is kind of like endearing. Yeah.
It is. And you just get better, and you know that you're going to get better, and you are improving. And a lot of people started podcasts during COVID, which I did. I did the same thing. I've been thinking about this podcast for 2 years. And then it's like, oh, I got nothing to do, and I got all the equipment to do it. So I'm going to figure this out. And I did it. And it saved my sanity, because otherwise I was reading the news every day. I was freaking out, all that stuff. And so it helped me. And now, I don't know, tell me if this is the same for you, but now I have, a routine, and I know what I need to do, and it's not like overwhelming like it was in the very beginning. And so it doesn't take as long. What you guys do is difficult, because you do research. And I do a little research. I try to find some people that I think would be interesting presenters. And like I said, I let my guests do the heavy lifting. And it works, but it works because everybody has a story to tell, and I want to hear that story. And I draw upon people's passion for what they're interested in. And so that is infectious, and it makes my job a lot easier. But has it become easier for you as time has gone on because of your familiarity with what the process is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first couple episodes we only had one mic. So as we were talking to you today on the one mic, it's weird whenever you're talking to each other, but you're staring at a wall. So we got 2 mics, and then we started looking at each other, and we started actually having more of a conversation and not so much reading straight from the notes. We were engaged and went off on side tangents. And I think now it's not, before, to me at least, I can't speak for you, but I was more nervous about messing up, and what if I said the wrong thing, and because we weren't really comfortable with editing. And now I think that's who we are. We are people on the people know us as a podcast who will pronounce wrong names, and they love it.
Yeah, I'm not going to get every single thing 100% right, but it's
right.
That.
Right. And it's just the notes we kind of struggled in the beginning since we were researching one topic, how we both could do research on it. So that's
Right.
when we decided that he would be more the graphic technical side. He would put up the Instagram photos, and then I would deal with the research side of things. And we would share notes and kind of talk about it before. And I think that's really worked because we're working off one cohesive piece of information.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
That's what she's a way better writer anyway, so it worked out.
yeah, I can. I enjoy writing, and he enjoys the graphic part, so it's really a good team work situation.
Yeah, I think definitely we just got more comfortable is the thing. It's just at the beginning it feels awkward. No matter what, anything
Yeah,
new you
right.
start feels awkward. But it's just the more you do it, and then yeah, like she said, you learn like you're gonna mess up. So it's
Yeah.
not it's not gonna be perfect. So it's just you
Well, I
learn
think
that.
that's what
And
makes these podcasts compelling, is because we're so relatable because we're human and everybody can
Yeah.
relate to that.
Yeah, and you also have to understand that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
No.
Some people enjoy strictly facts and no banter.
Mhm.
I like to banter.
that's what most of
Um,
our reviews on like iTunes and stuff say. Like they enjoy the just us talking. So it's
yeah.
like kind
Yeah,
of interesting.
some people, they don't want that. They just want to know what the facts are, and that's it. So for me, also in my soul, it's hard sometimes whenever we get a 1-star review, or because we put so much effort
Right.
into, because we enjoy it, but we also want other people to enjoy it. So it's something that I still struggle with, but you'll do what you can do, and not everybody's gonna love you, and that's okay.
That's
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, definitely. Well, I like your show and I'm going to continue listening. So I'm looking forward to, as we get into the holiday season, I consider Halloween the holiday season.
Yes,
Yes, we do
that's
too. It's
we've
the
we've
best
got
time of
a
year.
yeah, we've got a good lineup going. We sat down and kind of graphed out how we were going to do it this holiday because it's our first Halloween.
hmm
So we're going to try to make it.
So we're gonna have 5 episodes in October instead of the 4. We're gonna have an extra Halloween special episode.
Oh, what a
So
good
Yes.
idea. I know I've been trying to come up with some ideas for that. And well, just a little side note about me. One of the things I do is I run a historic walking tour business and I do
oh
ghost
wow,
tours.
Oh,
They're a lot more popular. I'm actually on a documentary on Amazon. It's called Ghosts and Ghost Towns.
that's
oh wow.
awesome.
Yeah, I have some stories. I was thinking about doing maybe an episode or two where I talk to people who have good ghost stories, like maybe have a couple different ghost stories I don't know. But yeah, I've had some experiences. I am not necessarily a believer. I always preface my tours with that I don't necessarily believe in all this, but at the same time, I have had some experiences. And I think people love to think about this stuff and talk about
Hmm.
it. And I always ask, of course, I'm not doing tours now, and I'm really pivoting my vocation. So I'm getting away from it. But people love to talk about their ghost stories and experiences. So,
Well,
yeah.
and maybe in a little while, maybe we could interview you
Oh, okay.
with some of your ghost situations, and see what you can tell us.
Right.
That
Well,
would
I
be
originally started the business as history because I was straight up history. I curate exhibits and, just stuff like that. I work for a couple nonprofits that are historical preservation organizations. When I started the history walking tours, somebody said, "Oh, you should do a ghost tour." And I always say my tours are a combination of history and haunting. My ghost tours are. So it is steeped in history, and I always try to have something for everyone as far as the tour. But yeah, I would be a, I would be a guest. Let me
that would be
know.
awesome. Okay,
Yeah, that'd be
we'll
great.
plan that out.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Uh,
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that I believe in ghosts.
I get it.
I
Have
think
But
you
there's
had any
unexplained things that happen, but
have you had any unexplained things that have happened or
Well, I lived in an apartment in Huber Heights, which is about 20 minutes, 15 minutes from where I live now. I lived there by myself. It was my first time ever kind of living somewhere by myself. And it was a townhouse. I was on the end and I had a neighbor next to me. And there was some, like my bathroom door on my first floor, I watched it swing shut by itself. I heard knocking on my back door. My lights would flip on and off, and I would hear people like, and I don't know, it could have been my neighbors too, because both had stairs and they were on the same side. But I swear there was somebody walking up my stairs. So that's my only kind of brush with hauntings.
I think I've only had one. I think it was like 18-ish. I was living with my dad at the time, and I was up real late. Just, I don't know why I was up. It was just like summer, and I was up like it was like 2 a.m. And for some reason, I was just watching music videos. And I walked downstairs to grab a glass of water. And when I did, I was like all the way downstairs, and I didn't turn any lights on because I didn't want to wake anybody up. But I heard something whistle the song I was just listening to, like clear as day, and it was terrifying. So I just ran upstairs. I was like, forget the water.
See,
I don't need
that
it.
sounds really compelling because, yeah, that's crazy.
That was terrifying.
And a fun fact about, not really fun, it's kind of depressing, but our stepmom's mother passed away in that home in the back room. So
was she a whistler? Was she a whistler?
I don't know.
I don't know. I know she
they just whistle all the time.
She might have. But that house is it's beautiful, but it's like it backs up against the woods. So when you have no lights on, it's pitch black. So it's like, it was so dark. And yeah, I heard that whistle and I was like, nope, don't need the water. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I ran back upstairs. That was the creepiest moment of my life, probably. But that's about the only thing I've had that's unsettling like that. But
I think the creepiest thing, now I won't say it's creepy, but I have friends. So I live in Georgetown, Colorado, which is a National Historic Landmark District. There's over 240 buildings that are from the 1800s, and they're protected. So one of the things I say in my tours is that a lot of people believe that spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call it are attracted to what is familiar. And the fact that this landscape hasn't changed a whole lot in over 150 years, obviously if that is the case, then there's a lot of spirits that are here. A lot of people tell me stories about here. My friends, the Mays, they have a house that was built in the 1800s, and they had kind of like a party, but it was also a paranormal investigation where they had a group of paranormal investigators come, and I videoed the whole thing. I'll have to share this at some time on the podcast. And there was one point, do you watch the paranormal investigator shows?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was videoing it, and we were up in a front room. Now, this house was on a street that had, according to the old maps, the female, air quotes, dormitories, which were actually brothels. And they were like, this was a house that we know there was a family that lived there, and there was like 6 kids or something like that. But they were right on that street with the brothels. So there were kids in the house, but there was one room where there was a lot of, how sometimes it's like tools that they use for investigating go off. They have all the different detectors and they beep and the lights go off and stuff like that. And sometimes you'll be watching one of those shows and it's like, it looks like there's an interaction going on with the equipment, right? And other times it's like just weird, like something happens and you're like, well, that might have been something. I don't know. We were having that experience in this room where the investigator is talking and then equipment is doing what it does. And one of the things at one point he says, and we felt that from the conversation that we were talking to a child up in this front room, just all this stuff is happening, and we'd ask questions and the equipment would respond. And so at one point they have that, it's like a round box and then it's got lights. It goes from white to green, and then if it gets up to green, it means that they're touching the antenna. And they're right there, the closer they are to the box. And so Tom, the investigator, says, okay, I'm going to knock on the wall and make like a sentence, is how he put it, I think. And he did that. right? And he said, I want you to finish it. And of course, I'm thinking if this is a kid, they don't know what he's talking about, but that's just what I'm thinking because I'm really into it and I'm thinking, whoa. And so nothing happens. And then he does it again. And all of a sudden the box, after he does the box lights up with green, like, and it's an extended beep that doesn't stop. And then it does the beep of the, and it was like, oh my God, everybody in the room freaked out. So
everybody gets chills.
Yeah, it was crazy. So that to me was the closest I've come to something that seemed real. I have other stories too. I have some other ones. Yeah, let me know. I'll tell you ghost stories, till the cows come home.
That'll be awesome.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I maybe didn't talk about or that you wanted to add?
That's just, all our episodes are mysteryhistorypodcast.com. We have all of our episodes and we have a link so you can listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast. So we have
several different platforms.
iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, all that. So it's just all available at mysteryhistorypodcast.com.
We also have a store and a Patreon.
Oh yeah, you guys have
well.
merch. I
Yeah,
want
we
to
do.
do merch. I want to do merch someday, but I was looking at your merch. You have some cool stuff.
Well, and
Thank you.
he designs it all. If it was just me, we wouldn't have a store because I don't know how to do any of that. But my favorite shirt is we did an episode on Elizabeth Bathory, and her servants called her ladyship. So we have a ladyship shirt because that is an awesome name. And Jordan thinks that that's stupid, but we've gotten a couple orders, so it must not be too stupid,
We got people buying it, so yeah, I'm down with it.
I'll have links to all that in the episode notes. Jordan and Allison, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing what new content you come out with. And hopefully we can set some time up so we can interview you next time.
Yep, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would love to have you guys back because you're so interesting and funny. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, bye. What a delightful pair of siblings. And the fact that they share my affinity for Halloween is just icing on the cake. Be sure to check out their podcast, which you can find a link to in the episode notes, as well as resources and more info about the Radium Girls. I do want to let you know that I have 2 more special Halloween season episodes coming out in the very near future. A great way to keep up to date with us is through social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Have a safe and wonderful Halloween.